So to start this tier list off, we have the Fighter. The Fighter class is a good all-around class with evenly distributed stats and access to the most amount of gear in the game thanks to his Weapon Mastery perk. This, however, does not make the Fighter exceed some other classes in the game. The Fighter's plate armor has high amounts of physical damage reduction, but reduces the amount of magic reduction he has, and with the meta primarily run by mages, this places the Fighter at B tier. Next we have the Barbarian. One of the Barbarian's biggest strengths is the Fighter's greatest weakness, magic. The Barbarian gets access to the perk Iron Will, which increases their magic resistance by 100 points. The Barbarian has a base strength stat of 30, which is the highest of any class in the game. This high strength stat allows the Barbarian to take multiple physical and or magical hits, as well as hit enemies extremely hard. This, however, comes at a price, as the Barbarian has a slow attack and movement speed. At the moment, movement speed is one of the most important stats on a class, and if a ranger or spellcaster can keep their distance from a Barbarian, there is very little room for outplayability. If a Barbarian gets close to you, which is very likely due to his perks which boost his speed and lower in enemies, chances are he will win the fight. Ultimately, Barbarian is being placed in S tier due to his only real weakness being his speed. Before patch 1, I would place Rogue in B tier, however, he received some pretty harsh nerfs right before the patch, leading me to place him in C tier. Rogues have a small base damage stat and only become relevant when geared. Rogues are also hard to play within a team comp, as the class is fairly selfish and squishy. I don't play rogues, so I don't have much to say about him except there are better options. The Ranger is definitely one of the strongest classes in the game right now, despite its recent nerfs. If you stack strength or anything that improves physical damage as a ranger, you can two-shot most of the classes in the game. Adding the ability to trap enemies in place for multiple seconds, allowing a free kill 70% of the time, makes the ranger even more powerful. The ranger exceeds when they are in a room with lots of open area, as it's difficult for an opposing player to push the ranger when they can spam 80 damage shots every 2 seconds. Overall, the ranger is one of the strongest classes in the game right now, and its only disadvantage is close range engagements, which any good player can avoid, so the ranger is going in S tier. Now we have the 4 spellcasters, starting with the wizard. Before the insane amount of Warlock work Iron Mace is done, I would consider the wizard an S tier class. However, one key factor is making me demote the wizard to A tier, being the Warlock spell Eldritch Shield. This spell protects the wearer from 40 magical damage for 15 seconds, which completely counters the wizard. The only real outplayability I see right now is the wizard's Intense Focus skill. This skill, however, removes the main spell restoration available on the wizard, being Meditate, and they must rely on Clarity Potions and Slow Resting, or Coral of Clarity if the wizard is playing with a bard. Now, if the wizard is not facing a warlock, they are a class which deal high amounts of damage, but lack in defense. The wizard also has the ability to buff teammates, boosting their movement speed, attack damage, and making a teammate invisible. These buffs, of course, can be self-cast as well. The wizard scales very well with gear, allowing the class to kill players in 2 to 3 zaps. Ultimately, the wizard is the glass cannon that is seen in all games inspired by Dungeons & Dragons, dealing high amounts of magical damage with low health and defense stats, and is being placed in A tier. The pocket healer that everyone knows and loves, the Cleric, is up next. The Cleric has access to high amounts of both physical and magical damage reduction, thanks to the high will stat and plate armor they get access to. The Cleric typically stays back and heals the tank of the team. However, there are multiple different playstyles available to the Cleric, including becoming the physical damage eating and dealing tank, or a wizard substitute if they have a high enough knowledge stat. The Cleric also gets access to some of the best perks in the game, including Holy Aura, which increases all nearby allies' AR and MR by 15, and Perseverance, which reduces all incoming damage by 3. The Cleric also has the ability to counter the Warlock, thanks to the Cleanse spell. Because of all the reasons stated, Cleric is being placed in S tier. The penultimate class is the Bard, which is one of, if not the best class pre-patch. However, the Bards suffered a heavy nerf, being the fact that they now need knowledge to increase their amount of spells. This nerf was well deserved, but it heavily reduced the number of Bard players, including myself. If the Bard had access to better skills, it might rank higher, but the 2 skills they have access to other than music memory are complete garbage. If a Bard gets enough knowledge, sure, it's one of the strongest classes, but right now I'm going to place it at a safe B tier. Last but certainly not least, we have the Warlock. Thanks to the Warlock being completed, there is an insane number of spells the player can use. Hydra can be used in a variety of different ways, including to reveal enemies, prevent players from pushing through doors, and isolating enemies for easy kills. Players can also sap off the Hydra, giving it net health profit when running 3 or more magical healing. The Warlock also counters all magical damage due to the Eldritch Shield spell, and has infinite health if they run plus magical healing gear. One downside to the Warlock is that Curse of Pain and Power of Sacrifice do not stack, so if you have 2 Warlocks on your team, only one person can heal from Pain and one from Sacrifice at a time. I believe the Warlock's in A tier right now, but their changes are fairly recent, so Warlock could go into S tier. Let me know what you think about this tier list and what you would change.